Hey everyone, this is Jimmy from Just Set Trading. Today is Sunday, April 19th. We're a few hours after the market open, and you can see here that we did gap down quite a bit from all the geopolitical news. So we'll dive into that a little bit later. But first, we want to take a look at some of the big upcoming events from earnings as well as some of the red folder news that we have. So first off, let's go over to our market watch to see what's on the slate for this week. So Monday we don't have anything. Tuesday we have retail sales, but that's not really anything that's too notable. Really, Wednesday nothing at all. The only big one is really Thursday 8:30 a.m. Eastern. We have the initial jobless claims as well as our consumer sentiment on Friday. So those are things that are high impact that we'll look for liquidity and manipulation legs to make some trades off of. But other than that, we don't have too much. Something that we do have, though, are some earnings that are coming up. So some of the ones that I am looking at is obviously really the Tesla is the big one. We also have Intel coming up um, later this week on Thursday after the close, but not too much else. UNH is something that I've been watching because it's part of my long term, and then we do have a Boeing leap that has been looking pretty good so far. We're up quite a bit on those sleeps. They're about a year out. So those are really the only main ones that we will be looking out for. There's not too much compared to some of the upcoming ones when a lot of the other Mag 7 stocks starts having earnings. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of their tickers to be mindful of. But first thing, as always, I like to go over the futures. So we want to look at ES and NQ. So we have some pretty big levels that we broke, which is all-time high. That was the most notable thing to trade from last week. We have a very solid move all the way up. Made quite a killing on the way up. But with all the geopolitical tension that's going on with the Strait of Hormuz and whatnot, we did see a quite a big gap down from some of the sentiment that was released from both the Iran side as well as the US side. So with all this volatility, it is going to provide us some very good opportunities, but we just have to be mindful where we're trading and what some of the levels are to look at. So first off, right off the bat, we're going to look at MES, well, really ES, so the S&P futures. So you can see here we got the big gap down right at the Asia Open, but we did wick down and hit our previous all-time high, which is going to act as quite a bit of a support. And then we are starting to rally and close up that gap. So we'll see what happens overnight. We're going to be paying attention to the late London and Asia levels pretty closely come pre-market. But what we want to look at really is if we zoom out and we just look at some of the market structure, we are still in an uptrend. This whole entire area where we consolidated the later half of the week, last week, right on Thursday and Friday, this is going to be acting as our demand level because we built some market structure here where this is going to be treated as demand. In addition, we also do see at around 70, 75, 70, 60s, that area we do have large volume nodes, which is going to act as some pretty decent support as well. I wouldn't be very bearish until this market structure gets invalidated and we are indeed in a downtrend. But until then, I am still bullish, looking for that gap fill up above back to 7160, which is the next large volume node, and then the previous day high, which is Friday. And then even further up, we are looking very far out though, but this is 7461, which is our next target for the upside. So I do have a video on how I mark out some of these uh, higher levels after we pass all-time high on my Instagram, so be sure to check that out. But until then, we will look at the near-term targets, look for the gap fill, and if we can support above 70.75, we'll look to be bullish as the week goes on. All right, now jumping over to NQ, very similar story. We did have that structural demand built up on Thursday and Friday. We're going to be looking at a previous day low level at 26,443 as a place to go long, and we get some sort of manipulation like down below, but we hold. That would be a place that would have very good risk to reward opportunity to go back long. But until then, I'm still quite bullish, looking for that gap fill. We'll see how price reacts again near that all-time high. The one thing to note, which is a little bit of divergence between ES and NQ, is that we are substantially above the recent all-time high or previous all-time high on ES, but not on NQ. So right now we are trading below previous all-time high, which is providing some sort of divergence between these two correlated pairs. So we'll see what happens as the night progresses, and we'll be ready to trade Monday market open. All right, next few things I want to look at as we go on are some of the equities I will be looking at. There are 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that I'm most interested in. I am not really interested in on anything that has earnings because of that increased volatility since we trade options here. But some of the key ones that I want to look at, I'll probably start off with from the bottom up actually. The first one I'm looking at is going to be gold. So with all this volatility, gold has always been a safe haven. We got some strength late last week, so we did have a closure above 445, which was a previous support level that turned into resistance, and now we reclaimed 445, and it should act as support. So what I want to see is a hold above 445, and in fact, what I'll even do is add this gap fill level. So as long as we really maintain above 443 and get some sort of consolidation there, or we just stay above 45, I will look to go long to go to fill the upwards gap, which is all the way around 452 all the way up to 456. So this gap actually starts even lower because we gapped up and then we gapped down. So I'll treat this bottom level of 452 as really my bottom of the gap level. But this has been going to be a good safe haven for some folks who are looking to diversify, which has always been the case when we see a lot of this geopolitical turmoil. One more thing that we can actually note here that I just saw is that we do have quite a bit of trend line that we could treat as a drawn liquidity, so we'll be an eye out on that. We'll keep an eye out for that. This is really a higher time frame drawn liquidity, so my bias is really to the upside on gold. All right, so next thing that we have is Target. Target, we have we are up quite a bit. I posted this one on my X or my Twitter. The setup that I was long going for a very higher time frame drawn liquidity, which is all the way up here at this 184. So this drawn liquidity is going to take quite some time. I've been in this position for about like half a year or so, and we're currently up around 180% on our leaps. So it was some really good risk reward, but I do see in the short term that we do have an opportunity to close this gap. So back then, back in what was this in January 2025, so that was quite some time ago, we actually gapped down from one of the earnings, it looks like, and we actually tried to do a gap fill, but we actually never did complete the gap fill. So one of the things I'm looking for really is this 148 level. So what we're looking for is a break and retest, and then going to go long up to that gap fill level. It might take some time, but you know, what we're looking for is really the hold of the 126 level to go long. And with all this extra turmoil and any kind of impact to the Fed rates, right, we can look at some of these equities like Target, Costco, some of those down components that are going to be a little bit more conservative instead of super growth oriented to go long. So that's it for Target. We'll be on the lookout for that 126 hold throughout this week. All right, next one we have is PayPal. PayPal, another one of the really good setups. We've been in a swing position that is up a couple 100% at this point. I think it's reaching 300% when we took a swing trade with this breakout going up to the 52 level for the full gap fill. It's going to take a little bit to get all the way back up to our 200 SMA, which is what you see here in the orange curve. That's going to be our next really big target for any kind of shares or leaps that we do go into. But at least in the near term, this is showing some strength, even on the weekly chart. I would like to see this full gap fill, and then our CTM and stock RSI is really trending up. So looking to get back to at least the 55.77 level as a medium-term target. Might see some pullback back to um, this 47.91 level, really the top of this daily bull flag, but we'll see what happens. Either way, I'm looking for any kind of continuation to finish this gap fill. If we break and hold 51.20, we probably won't see that tomorrow because of the gap down from futures that will probably gap down tomorrow at open. But again, just be on the lookout for a hold of 47.48, and then we're going to look for a continuation to finish up the gap fill up to 52. All right, a few more. Next one we have is Apple. Apple, we actually rejected this larger trend line always back from December 2025. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 touches at this point. So that what that really means is if we do break this, we should see quite a big move up, and we'll see a lot of shorts having to cover. Either way, what I do see in addition to that is that we did build a RBR rally base rally. Although this is a fairly large basing candle, this will still be acting as a support and demand level right at the 266 level to go long. So I'll be watching that. Something else to note is our TTM looks like it's getting ready to release. So we can see that some of these black dots right here, those are things to take note of. Once it turns green, that means that we can go with the momentum and the squeeze is happening. So those are some key elements to look at on this chart. If I go over to the weekly real quick, we can kind of see that we are also curling up. Same thing, we bounce off of the 200 SMA on the daily. We are curling up on both the TTM and the stochastic RSI. So very bullish on Apple. I think it's been lagging, especially with the futures hitting all-time high. So we'll see what happens in this coming week. All right, we have next one coming up is Google. I guess we'll start off on the weekly time frame first. Very similar thesis, just as Apple. We are in a clear uptrend. We swept a lot of liquidity back down below 296, and we reclaimed it. So we're looking for the higher time frame draw on liquidity, which is really all-time high, all the way up at 349. This has also been lagging quite a bit, along with Microsoft, which is our next ticker. This one had also built in somewhat of a rally-based rally with a demand zone right at 338 level. This isn't as much of a aggressive rally candle before and after the basing candle that I would really like to see. But either way, I will be looking for a hold of this demand zone to go long to take out the 349 to get to new all-time highs. All right. And then we have next one looking at this Microsoft. Microsoft is very interesting because we actually had the red candle on a green day on Microsoft on Friday, but we did maintain and break above a key level of 421.02. So this to me is bullish. Again, we have our previous swing point back here at 413, which we broke out of, but we never really fully retested. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get some sort of action where we come down and retest 413.05 before we go towards that gap fill area. So because we have our 200 SMA up above here, as well as the gap fill, the outlook on Microsoft is definitely going to be bullish. So all we really need to do is look for areas to go long at. So we're going to be looking at that 413 to go long if we do get back down there. All right, lastly, what we have is Meta. Meta reclaimed the daily 200 SMA, which you can see here. We are also very much of lagging behind some of the other equities as well as the futures that we didn't hit all-time high. We do have this trendline liquidity up here. We have the next pivot point all the way up at 744. So as long as we maintain and stay up above their daily 200 SMA, I would be still fairly bullish and targeting that 744 as our next level. So that is our weekly watch list going into the week of 420. Again, just remember, be careful of some of these catalysts. We can get news from Trump or from Iran at any second. Just remember to manage your risk, stay safe, and hope you all do well. Have a good one. Peace out.